I went out for a joyride the other night in my 2001 Honda Odyssey, the spookiest car. I must have taken a wrong turn because the road started getting narrower and narrower. The trees were crowding in on both sides. It got so narrow that I couldn't make a U-turn, so I just kept going forward, hoping it would widen out eventually. I rolled up to this rickety old bridge and thought, golly, there's no way I can get across there. And now I'm starting to kinda wig out because I remembered that escaped maniac that everyone's been talking about on Twitter, the one with a hook for a hand, who's rumored to be hiding out in the area. And I'm like, okay Nora, don't freak out, okay? So I checked the Maps app on my phone, but it was glitching out or something. Instead of roads, it just showed a bunch of veins and eyeballs and stuff. So that was no help. And then I heard it. This low scratching, like something metal was scraping along the side of my car. Which just fuck it, says I. And I just reversed like hell all the way back to the main road. Big sigh of relief. But when I finally got home and stepped out of the car and looked at the car and looked really close at the side of the car and the scratches there and followed the scratches with my eyes all the way from the back of the car to the front of the car and really hyper-focused in on the driver's side door where the scratches were leading to. And man door hand hook car door. Hello ladies and gentlemen, NBs, and welcome to Nora's Cinema Sinistre. I'm your horror hostess for the night, the sole survivor of a summer camp massacre, Nora. And this is my Cinema Sinistre, the show where we while away the witching hour, gabbing about the greatest genre in history, horror. Tonight we're talking about 2013's PMAC, directed by Banjong Pisanthanakun, starring Mario Maurer and Davika Horn. Mac and his four best buds return from the front to find that Mac's wife, Nak, has been shunned by the townsfolk who believe that she died in childbirth. She's a ghost. They're obviously right. She's super creepy, and Mac's friends resolve to prove it to him, notwithstanding their own cowardice and general propensity for bungling. General propensity? Yes. These last few years I've developed a real taste for wacky tearjerker comedies, and this one totally fits the bill. The characters are all good-natured, but just dumb as bricks, which makes for some really fun scenarios, and the writers bring this real devil-may-care attitude to things like time period or tone that really keeps you on your toes throughout. PMAC will shift from slapstick to horror to full-on lump-in-your-throat melodrama, often more than once over the course of a scene. It's rarely immersive, but if you're ready for a roller coaster ride, it sure won't lose your attention. My only major complaint is the pacing. Major complaint? At 115 minutes, it does drag. A lot of the comedy bits go on for kind of a while after the jokes stopped being funny. This begins to overshadow the horror and romance beats, which otherwise are pretty effective. 7 years later, PMAC is still Thailand's highest grossing movie ever. There's definite mass appeal here. If you like broad comedy and weepy romance, you'll definitely find something to like in PMAC. If you're looking for tonal consistency, nuanced characters, or highbrow comedy, keep looking, folks. Oh, and by the way, if you like the idea of a wacky, weepy ghost girlfriend rom-com, I'd also try Lee Eun-jin's Don't Worry, I'm a Ghost, a much tighter movie, if lower production value, featuring absolute heartthrob Park Shin-hye. Pisanthanakun is probably best known in America for his 2004 movie, Shudder, also a ghost girlfriend movie, centering a lead with more looks than brains, who's fallen in with a close-knit male social group that's dealing with some deep-seated emotional issues. Though tonally, it could hardly be further from PMAC. Shudder leverages everything: dialogue, performance, editing, its whole toolkit for horror. It's totally single-minded. If that makes it a kind of unfriendly movie, we can forgive it on account of the immediacy of its emotional experience. It's a real spooktacular, folks, and I don't say that lightly. PMAC, on the other hand, is always aiming to please right now this second, any way it can, and ends up sacrificing emotional amplitude for frequency, and a lot of the compromises it makes in service of comedy kind of kneecap its horror. That said, it's just kind of a more congenial movie. It's not such a surprise, really, that PMAC has been the more successful of the two, even though, by comparison, gosh, it's just such a bore. Even apart from the movie's differences as pure emotional experiences, the two arrive at wildly different ideological conclusions from virtually the same plot. In Shudder, codependence in male friendships leads to acts of irredeemable evil. The hero's willful ignorance of his ghost problem reads as a fatal flaw rather than the kind of sweetie pie sentimentality it represents in PMAC. And the final reveal that the ghost will remain close to the hero, which is so consoling in PMAC, feels in Shudder more like an eternal reminder of his failures. It makes me wonder why we give plot, among all the devices common to narrative media, plot which doesn't actually have a uniquely strong influence over a story's ideological or emotional character. Why we give plot such private dominance in discussions about narrative craft. Private dominance?